Without realizing, he found it was already in his hand. Tristan found he wanted nothing but the strange object. He yearned for this item, which seemed to call to him. He replaced the amulet with his own watch and put the bag back on the shelf, then placed the amulet in his pocket and kept about his business as if nothing had happened. The prince knocked over a broom, making a loud noise. A door opened in the back of the shop in response. The owner, Soren himself, walked out and greeted him. Tristan did not know this man, nor had he seen this man before in his life, yet felt like he should have. The shopkeeper knew his father, and now him, as the media spread his love life all over the tabloids. Master Tristan, you honor me with your presence. Is there anything you might be interested in today? Perhaps something for a special lady that has drawn your gaze? This surprisingly accurate old man gave the young man a strange feeling of guilt that he usually never felt. In addition, the man's ruffled, weathered gray hair and his cool, calculating eyes lent the image of one who must not be bothered, let alone robbed. His piercing gaze was ever watchful. Alas, for it was too late. The item could not be returned without him seeing what he had done. Tristan made conversation, asking, "What might a girl of my age be interested in, kind sir?" Winking, he said, "Ah, finally sitting down, eh? That is a very good question. I'd say a small trinket, like a bracelet or piece of jewelry. The best gift is something that has meaning to you, and hopefully her." Tristan agreed, looking around at the very nice selection of baubles, earrings, and perfume. He'd gotten his prize already, so he bid the man farewell and left. Alone in his shop, Soren flashed a knowing grin and a brief chuckle. Tristan had a shortcut which usually led him straight home, yet no turn seemed to point him that way. Everywhere he went, he reached a dead end, seeing the cold, sinister eyes of the man on every stranger. His breath, getting noticeably faster, gave haste to his frenzy, bringing him to the edge of his tolerance. Beads of sweat lined his face. Forcing himself to stop, he found a nearby cop and asked to be escorted home. Like every night, a giant meal was laid before him. During dinner, the food had a bad taste to it. On questioning it, his parents attested it was one of the greatest meals prepared by the chef. He then tried to listen to the music. Once again, he could find no solace. The singer is out of tune, he thought. When he questioned this, his parents proclaimed that the band was spot on. He soon went up to his tower. The house was a castle, or at least like one. The mansion was made of stone, manually imported from England piece by piece. It even had a tower. The White Tower, with its gleaming parapets, was a favorite spot of seclusion for the prince. This place was high enough that anyone with half a mind, or even a quarter of something important to do, would give up after an eighth of the way. Their business with Tristan was probably not that important anyway. In this way, the young man could find solace in his privacy. On troublesome days like this, he watched the sunset. As he looked out upon the city that would one day idolize him, he could find no bright, shining lights to inspire him. It was instead rather dark and ominous, providing no source of hope. Once again those eyes appeared out of nowhere in a flash that almost knocked him to his feet. "Who is this Soren?" he asked himself. "I'm an important person, so why am I forced to regret this so much?" He then looked at the prize waiting in his pocket, for which he had already suffered much. On seeing the amulet, his spirit flickered to optimistic. His need for it lent to the idea that no other choice could have been made, for it was so beautiful. He thought, "Serena will be so impressed that she will accept me instantly. What could be a better present?" He looked at it again, and found a small script written on the bottom. "When all is lost, have faith," he read. Feeling better, Tristan retired to his room for the evening. However, when he closed his eyes, all he saw was the pair of Soren's cold eyes gazing back at him, accusing him of his great crime. Every time he woke and returned to his slumber, the eyes came back, never relenting. Weeping, he resolved to return to the shop and beg forgiveness of the fearsome man. The next day he entered the shop and laid himself at the feet of the man, offering back the prize he had stolen. However, Tristan would have thought twice if he knew who Soren really was. Soren said, "The amulet is magic. It haunted you for your crime. In the end, your conscience was your downfall. I'll demand your service as payment. You may be a prince, but from now on you will think of me as a king." Afterwards he snatched back the mystical amulet. Fearing for his life, Tristan heard Soren muttering strange, inaudible words until darkness took him. Tristan woke up in the trunk of a car. His hands were bound, yet he could move around a bit. He still had no idea where Soren would take him. He just wished to take it all back. The journey was miserable for Tristan. The small, cramped compartment jostled and lurched with every bump in their path. He could tell the car was old. He knew it was raining by all of the water that leaked in. However, he did have the fortune of having a small air hole on one side, through which he could get fresh air. An added bonus, he later found, was that he could see out of it. He saw snow-capped mountains, broad crystalline streams, and towering trees. In this dire situation, he sought the sun to ease his journey. However, to his dismay, the sun could not be seen out of the hole. After a time, the road became much bumpier, tossing and throwing Tristan every which way. Surely the city doesn't build roads this shoddily, he thought. When I am older, I'll have to make a few donations to get the roads fixed. Then the idea came to him that perhaps they were no longer within the city. Frantically, he shouted, "Mr. Soren, please release me. You know who I am and who my father is. I can pay you back double. You know I have the money." "As you have shown, you are good for nothing," Soren said. "You deserve less than the pigs you will spend the rest of your life with." This kept Tristan very quiet for the remainder of the journey. The depth of sadness and regret he felt was such that none should feel in a lifetime. As he passed by the less fortunate people on the outskirts he previously thought so little of, he looked with a fresh perspective. "I'd gladly be poor for the rest of my life if I can just get out of this," thought Tristan. This journey had taken several days. He also had not been given any food or drink for its span, so Tristan, on the brink of death, was desperate for nourishment. He heard the strange muttering again, feeling the night as it took him into its embrace. The last image he saw was the light from a barn. The prince woke up to the sound of squealing. The prince found himself in a fenced enclosure with nothing but mud at his feet. The sheer volume of noise threatened to bust his eardrums. Tristan realized he was not alone. He was sharing a space with more than a dozen loud, sweaty pigs. The repulsion was more than he could handle. He could not recall a worse smell. Tristan would have lost his lunch, yet his stomach was so empty that nothing would come. He made a break for the fence in an attempt to climb over. As he got to the top, he felt himself immediately pulled back as if by an invisible chain. Then he felt it. A collar circled his neck, and chains materialized out of nothing. The prince was a prisoner, no more than an animal. After some time, Tristan even attempted to eat a pig, for he was being driven mad from hunger. However, he only managed to scare the pigs and cause them to avoid him. Some of the larger boars bowled him over in order to quell the threat, regardless of its size. Feeling quite foolish, he had to resign himself to the mercy of his new master. After an hour or two, as if by magic, the troughs were filled with pig slop. In a mad dash, he made it to the trough and immediately began to eat. He even fought off the pigs for some of their portion. After he had his fill, the boy scanned his surroundings. He was indeed at a farm, probably in a very remote region. 3 giant fields, each larger than the other, surrounded a moderate-sized 2-story house. The colossal, faded red barn sat next to the house. Still late at night, he sat in his wet clothes, even with the approaching cold and dark of night. He still shivered as Soren appeared. After inquiring after his new pet, he stated that Tristan would be pulling his plow tomorrow in order to undergo a full day's work. If he finished the work on the 3 fields in 3 days, then he might consider granting him the freedom he so desired. Visibly distraught, his mind fell into shadow. He knew he'd never be able to finish these chores in 2 weeks, let alone 3 days. "I will never see Serena again," he thought. But then he thought back to the amulet. When all is lost, have faith. With that he resolved to hope for the best and pray for strength.